know when they're live.
Yep, we're ready to go.
Fantastic. This is the ordinary meeting of the council on the 31st of August 2021, held via remote technology. I now hand you over to the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Good evening, councillors and members of the Blue Mountains community. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of the Blue Mountains City Council tonight. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to a live stream is available from the council's website. The audio recording will be available on the council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without that other individual's consent. The council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The council's code of meeting practice sets standards of conduct for a council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, the Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the council, and members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance. Any submissions received have been provided to the councillors. I now ask you to please welcome the Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. The Blue Mountains City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country. This is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungra takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. I thank you all for your attendance tonight. I don't think we have any apologies. Move to the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held 27 July 2021. It's moved Councillor Van der Clay, seconded Councillor Fell. They are a true record. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried unanimously. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? No declarations, thank you. I'll now move to procedural motion. That's procedural motion moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Fell, that the council suspends standing orders and brings forward an urgency motion by Councillor Miles for debate.
I'd like to move a motion of dissent on that. It's not a procedural motion.
Well, I haven't ruled on it yet, so that's moved and seconded. And as it's a motion, it doesn't require a ruling from me, so there's nothing to dissent. I'll put it. All those in favour?
Well, I'm moving that it is an illegal motion, and I would like to have the general manager's ruling on it, because
yes, all those
responsibility.
Councillor Brown.
It is not a
Councillor
procedural
Brown.
motion.
I'm going to Councillor Brown.
I'm moving a point of order.
Councillor Brown.
It's not a procedural motion. I'm moving a point of order. This is not
Councillor
a procedural
Brown.
motion.
Under 1511E, you are acting now in a way that is disorderly.
And I move
I'm
that
going to ask you to
I
cease.
move that you should not be in the chair because you are acting in a biased way toward me. This is not a procedural motion, and I'm moving a point of order.
Councillor Brown, under 1511D of the code, you have just made a personal reflection and imputed improper motive on me as chair. Under 1512C,
Oh, you've done your homework, haven't you?
I now
You've been
require
working
you.
hard on this.
I now require you, Councillor Brown, to retract and apologise without reservation immediately.
For what? For what? What am I apologising for?
Because you've just...
No, you told me you have to give
I've
me
just
what
told
I've
you.
said. What did I say that was actually...
The words you
said you
just
were
used to
acting in a
describe
biased
me,
manner.
imputing an improper motive.
I said you were
Yes,
acting
for that,
in a biased
I'm now
manner. I
calling...
didn't say what your motives were.
Yeah,
And
and
you have
for
refused
saying that
to
I'm acting in a
allow-
biased
you
manner,
refused to allow a motion of dissent,
for saying that I haven't even
refused
got
to
to it
allow
yet.
a
For
point of
saying that I'm
order.
acting...
and you've refused to allow the general manager to rule on something which is actually an illegal motion.
I've now called Councillor Brown to order. She is engaged in an act of disorder. She's breached 1511D of the code, which says an act of disorder occurs where a person insults or makes reflections on or imputes improper motives of any other council official or alleges a breach of the council's code. That has just occurred. I have called upon Councillor Brown under 1512C to immediately retract or apologise. I'm going to give Councillor Brown a second chance to do that. Councillor Brown, you might wish to unmute yourself. Okay, Councillor Brown has had that opportunity. There's a motion now moved by Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Feld. The Mayor now excludes Councillor Brown from the meeting. That's moved and seconded. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? I declare it carried with Councillor Brown and I think Councillor Schreiber now that motion has been carried, I will now expel Councillor Brown from the service of the meeting. Will IT please enact that?
I would like to tell you that I have written to the Minister about this and the local government already. You should be aware of that. This just can...
I'll ask IT to remove Councillor Brown from the meeting, please. Are we working on that?
Got to keep working on it.
Thank you. All right, so it's we now have a procedure and a matter of urgency. The procedural motion brings forward the matter of urgency. I'll put the procedural motion, which suspends standing orders and brings forward an urgency motion by Councillor Miles for debate. That has been moved, Councillor Miles, and seconded Councillor Fell. I'll put the procedural motion, standing orders be suspended. All those in favour? Is there anyone against? Councillor Schreiber, you didn't vote. You're in favour or against? I'm going to take you as against. I can't hear you, but your hand went up late. All right. You support the motion. Okay, well, that's unanimous. So it's passed. So now we have a urgency motion in the name of Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Fell. For the benefit of the meeting, I will read it and then I will go to Councillor Miles as the mover. The motion is in several parts. One, that the council notes the persistent conduct of Councillor Kerry Brown, brackets Councillor Brown, on social media that brings the council into disrepute. Two, the council notes the expenses incurred by this council in defending claims made by Councillor Brown during the recent public inquiry. Three, that the council notes the public inquiry cleared the governing bodies of the 2012 and 2016 councils. Four, that the council notes actions to correct management failings were led by the CEO, the executive team, the mayor and the majority of the governing body. Five, that the council notes the New South Wales Ombudsman's report into the conduct of SafeWork New South Wales and Councillor Brown's persistent attempts to play this down. Six, the council notes the outcomes of 2 code of conduct reports undertaken by independent investigators that were damning of Councillor Brown's conduct. 7, that the council notes the additional cost to the community of the politicised aspects of the asbestos matters. 8, that the council notes the Blue Mountains Greens' refusal to re-endorse Councillor Brown after only one term as their candidate. 9, that the council expresses no confidence in Councillor Brown as a member of the governing body. 10, that the council, noting the claims made that have been dismissed by the Code of Conduct investigator and also by Commissioner Beasley during the public inquiry, endorses that Councillor Brown be directed to implement the directions of the outstanding Code of Conduct matters by issuing an unreserved apology in accordance with the Council Resolution of 18 December 2018, Minute 478, which requires Councillor Brown be required to apologise in writing to the complainants in terms to be specified by the conduct reviewer. Both apologies should refer to the 3 categories of misconduct set out in the findings at 4 and be framed in line with the New South Wales Ombudsman's Office Apologies, a Practical Guide, 2nd edition 2009, and that such letters of apology be included in the précis of correspondence reported to the next ordinary meeting of the Council, with copies provided to the CEO by 9 September 2021 for inclusion in the next meeting précis of correspondence. 11, that in accordance with the Council Resolution of 4 April 2018, Minute 141, and subsequent conduct report resolved by the Council on 29 January 2019, Minute 33, which requires that all copies of reports authored by Clyde and Co and McCulloch Robertson be returned. The Council directs Councillor Brown to return all confidential documents kept in contravention of Council's previous resolution be delivered to the CEO by appointment no later than 4 p.m. Friday, 3 September. 12, that the Council calls on the CEO to provide the Office of Local Government with records of Councillor Brown's conduct during the term of this Council. And 13, that the Council calls on the Office of Local Government to review said documents and advise the Council of what actions it may take to remove Councillor Brown from the service of the Council. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Miles, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those who are watching online, you have just witnessed an act of disorder, a wanton act of disorder that reflects many of the concerns that have brought forward this motion. Good government is in the service of the people. It doesn't just happen, it has to be worked for, it has to be protected. That means sometimes doing things you wouldn't want to do, such as obeying the rules of the council. The councillor who has just left, who tried to talk over the top of the mayor on multiple occasions, has disrespected the people of the Blue Mountains by that action, but has also disrespected the people of the Blue Mountains whom we serve by her persistent refusal to obey the rules of the council. This motion seeks to call her to account. I was the subject of a code of conduct which I vehemently then and now disagree with, but I followed the rules of the Code of Conduct reviewer even though I found them repulsive. I did what the rules require. Other councillors have done precisely the same and with the same opinions. We follow the rules of the council because we wish to serve the people, we wish to restore good government. And the act that we saw tonight and the acts that are contained in this motion do not do so. Mr. Mayor, we've had one of the most exhaustive inquiries in any local council's history. And at the end of it, Commissioner Beasley made rulings which, as you've said, made no findings against the elected bodies elected in 2012 or 2016. Councillor Brown has never accepted that. She has acted as though that didn't happen. And she continues to push a narrative, most recently on social media, hence, which is the trigger for bringing this forward, because she continues to bring this council into disrepute, that she must be told to cease this and get on with the job. We've all won, we've all lost in this chamber, but we get on with it and we move on to the next thing. You do what you have to do to serve the community. Instead, I refer councillors to the social media comment on one of the bespoke sites where she spoke about how the council had not, or no one had suggested that Safe Work, having been directed by the Ombudsman to make financial restitution to this council, that no one had suggested very small amount, no one had suggested that they should pay a larger amount. That is factually untrue. She states that no one had suggested that the Safe Work should pay more. This council suggested that. It suggested that the millions of dollars that we had spent should be made good to this community so that we could continue to serve it in infrastructure, maintenance and capital works. We have a councillor who has been directed by an independent Code of Conduct reviewer to apologise to 2 other councillors, and not for weeks or months, but for years has acted in defiance of that directive. That is not good government. That is not acceptable. And tonight we have to set a standard to say this and no more, and that she be directed to carry out the rules of this council. Resolutions of this council aren't optional. They bind us all. But Councillor Brown, by her actions, feel that that is not the case in her case. She needs to understand that we are a government of laws, not people, and it matters not who you are, you have to follow. Return documents, confidential documents she was directed to return, which she has not complied with those directives either. Mr. Mayor, the Ombudsman gave a very clear opinion and issued a very unhappy finding for 2 ministers of the state government, not a small thing. Similarly, Commissioner Beazley issued a very clear interpretation of the events that had occurred from 2017 when the allegations were made, or prior to 2017, in terms of asbestos management. We at the start accepted all of the requirements that we were to undergo. And yet now here we are still with Councillor Brown still trying to pin whatever responsibility should be pinned on the elected body when all of the inquiries have suggested otherwise. The conspiracy theories have to stop. It was not the elected body. No findings were made against the elected body. The problems that occurred within the organisation were operational. When the councillors found out about them, we acted to remedy them, and that's the position we are in today. And yet you've just seen a wanton act of disorder by a councillor who appears to believe that the rules don't apply to her. They do, and tonight we vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. And in taking a second to speak, I might just let the executive officer know that the lights have gone out behind me. If someone can come and remedy that. It's a bit dark in here and hard to read. I'll now take the second, Councillor Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments are very brief. I think that Councillor Miles has canvassed all the issues that have been on my mind for quite some time. But I would just draw a couple of things to further attention. The first one being the matter of code of conduct investigations. Council censured Councillor Brown following code of conduct complaints that were made by 2 councillors, and an independent investigation that was conducted by a qualified investigator, recommended by, not by the council itself, but by the New South Wales Office of Local Government. I can't go into any details on that, the matters of confidentiality, which incidentally I do hold as being an essential principle. But an outcome of this was that Councillor Brown was directed to make written apologies to 2 councillors and to undertake further training in code of conduct matters. And this, to my knowledge, has definitely not happened. To me, it shows a lack of respect to her fellow councillors, to council itself, and in fact, to the Office of Local Government, who were the people, after all, who provided the investigator. That's the first issue that I wish to bring to further attention. The second being the failure to return copies of confidential documents that were issued to councillors to assist and inform us in our deliberations. These have included legal opinions, documents identifying people who've provided information to us, such as their opinions of others, perhaps other staff members, whatever, their interpretation of events, a whole range of things, and who may not wish their identity to be in danger of being disclosed by documents being out of council's direct control. Being able to protect identities, to have confidentiality with respect to legal and other professional opinions, etc., is central to our ability to act and to ensure that our deliberations are as well informed and as competent as possible. The council took that view on several occasions and resolved that documents were to be returned, and had that majority resolution, as in the case of the first issue of the Code of Conduct complaints, just absolutely ignored. And to me, this is a blatant act of disrespect to the council and an attack on our ability to carry out our functions as have been assigned to us through the process of election to council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fell. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Fernanda, and then Councillor McGregor. Councillor Fernanda has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to also probably give some clarity too for the public. Yes, you know, there have been many breaches of not handing in documents, of falsely accusing or ignoring reports from the Ombudsman. But where that translates into our community and actually damages our community is all the hidden costs that have incurred because of false allegations about staff members, about this council that keep persisting and persisting by Councillor Brown. The cost that these persistent digging at and digging away at our council and what we stand for and the good that we have done has cost this city millions, tens of millions of dollars because of false accusations that led to and still trying to lead to the demise of the council, but also the staff. The cost alone of an inquiry, of which council, even though we've asked for the cost to be incurred, can never be fully summarised with the damages that have been incurred on this city. All of us here, or most of the councillors here, would probably agree, and beg me if I'm wrong, please stand up and do a point of order. But there have been many things that we've wanted to do in our city. When people say that we don't have accessible footpaths, our parks are in disarray, that they complain and ask for other services to be initiated. Well, we wanted to do those. We wanted to do that for our community this term, but we couldn't because of the high costs that were incurred, as I said, in the tens of millions, because of the actions of Councillor Brown. And
Councillor Fernanda, I will pull you up there. I'm sure you don't mean to imply that Councillor Brown's actions led to the total cost.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. Not the total cost, but certainly if we break it down, it has cost this city a great amount of money.
Yes.
And it's money that could have been put into services for our communities. It could be built towards, I wanted to put in another change room, an adult change room in some of our swimming facilities. So people with disabilities and their carers could come and use our pools and have somewhere with dignity, things like that. These are the services we wanted, and these are the services we couldn't do because of the high costs from allegations that kept persisting throughout this whole term, which we had to chase to defend ourselves and defend our city and defend our staff. That costs money. And the reason why it costs money is because Councillor Brown was the one to come up with these false allegations.
Well, again, if I may,
so that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And if I may, Councillor Fernanda, I think you would agree with me that it wasn't just Councillor Brown; there were others involved.
Yes, there were others involved.
Yeah. And I know that you would agree with me that Councillor Brown's not responsible for all of that expenditure by any stretch. But
not all of it, but I want the public to know the reason why this has also been brought forth, I think, is because we need to actually work together and stop these actions that do cost the city a fortune.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. I appreciate your forbearance. Thank you. I think I next called Councillor McGregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Miles, for bringing this to council. This is long overdue. It needs to be addressed. It should have been addressed long ago, in fact. It's been a frustrating term, I think, for all of us. Where we've had right from the beginning, the council meetings have been turned into a theatre for people to a councillor to gain publicity, publicity based on no factual basis whatsoever. This has gone on continuously, and what it does enormous damage to individuals, to council's reputation, to the elected body's reputation, and to staff's reputations and careers, and indeed, in some cases, their mental health. This can't be tolerated. You know, this has gone on when we've confronted the biggest bushfire emergency ever in Australia, in fact, ever on the planet. We've had to go through nearly 2 years of a pandemic. We've had to deal with the constant harassment from sections of the media, for interference by ministers of the Crown in attempts to get us sacked, and all of this has been applauded and cheered on by Councillor Brown. Another of the really damaging things that it's done to this community is undermine trust in government just when communities absolutely depend on it. You know, in a world where we're facing multiple threats, we have this weird phenomena of Trumpian sort of deniability of facts that are as plain as the nose on your face. Evidence the demonstration outside council earlier today. I mean, you just this has to be stopped because it's doing damage to democracy. It's doing damage to individuals, and it has interfered with our ability to deliver services and services to the people of our community. Thanks. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Miles, for bringing this motion, a really significant and important motion, forward. I will be supporting this motion absolutely 100%, absolutely fully. Councillor Brown's vain attempts over this term of council to gaslight and undermine the governing body, the council and the staff, and indeed our community, to put doubt, lay seeds of doubt in our community about the capacity of this council to function and serve the community, has to end, and it has to end tonight. And this notice of motion, your motion, says that we are endorsing a vote of no confidence in Councillor Brown, and I absolutely support that. And I agree with Councillor McGregor that this has gone on too long. One of the things that I continue to be surprised and concerned about is, once we had the findings from the public inquiry and the findings and the outcomes of the Ombudsman's report, that was the time to draw a line in the sand. And in fact, I thought that that's what would happen. But in fact, the undermining and this term gaslighting, making everybody second guess the reports that are put forward to council, the asking questions of staff, it just has to stop. It's costing our council time and resources. It's affecting the way our governing body operates in a collegiate and collective way for the benefit of this community that we serve, that we are privileged enough to be elected to serve, and that we all, everybody sitting around this, virtual table, we all take really seriously. We've gone through the public inquiry. Councillor Brown has had plenty of opportunity to make submissions, and she did. Many many submissions to that public inquiry, most of which were dismissed. It is time to draw a line in the sand, as I have said before, and she's had ample opportunity to do that, and to say we need to move on in a positive and constructive manner. And I have not been seeing that over the last year. What I've been seeing is endless questions. In fact, I believe that we've got something here tonight where we're not, a proposal not to move the budget. It's ridiculous. We've all had time to read it, and we've all had time to ask questions if we needed to, and we've been fully briefed. This is the process that we follow, but somebody else wants to do something differently. And it is actually affecting the way that we are able to bring our best selves forward and serve our community. So for me, I will be 100% supporting this, because our governing body needs to be able to function as well as possible. And at the moment, we're being dragged down. I believe that our staff need to stop being distracted by endless questions that consume resources. We've had a public inquiry that's answered and looked at and trawled through the endless questions and found nothing, found that this governing body acted appropriately. And at the same time, our community deserves better. And our community needs to know where we stand. We have tried to be as professional as we possibly can, but I absolutely agree with Councillor Miles that we need to draw a line in the sand on this, and we absolutely need advice from the Office of Local Government around what we can do to remove Councillor Brown from office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? If not, I might ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair. Was there another speaker? Councillor Schreiber with a question.
Councillor Schreiber wanted to speak.
I heard that. I'm still on the chair, Councillor van der Klee. Thank you for that. Councillor Schreiber with a question.
Question to you, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. With the suspension tonight of Councillor Brown, how long is that suspension for? Could you please give us an idea?
You would understand the code,
yes.
And you would have read it, and you would have heard my words. Councillor Brown was expelled from this meeting.
Thank you.
I would say, Councillor Schreiber, if this resolution passes, it requires Councillor Brown to do certain things, and it may be that any non-action around those things could, at the time, and I'll rule on it then, be a further act of disorder if not complied with, and could result in a similar motion until complied with at each meeting, but we'll take that as it comes. But for the moment, the expulsion related to one meeting. This one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor van der Klee, since no one else wishes to speak, I will enter the debate just for a moment, if I can.
Mr. Mayor, you got the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor van der Klee. Councillors, the trials and tribulations of the term have been long. They resulted in a public inquiry which found no fault in the conduct of the 2012 and 2016 councils. It also found that we acted to correct, in concert with the executive leadership team, management errors of the past about which the governing body knew nothing. And yet just over a week ago, Councillor Brown published on Facebook the following, and I'll quote from her: "The public are unaware because of clever manipulation of the media." Now, so there she's basically importing that one of the reasons the investigation went as it did was because we'd manipulated the media, and that's just not true. She then goes on to say that the Gazette's coverage was inconsistent. That's not true, but I'm focused more on the comment about the conduct of the council. It brings us into disrepute to say publicly that we, and I'll quote further, buried the most shocking facts. The fact that the most significant and disturbing reports have been kept confidential by the council brings the council into disrepute, because reports were subject to confidentiality based on legal advice and the risk that persons could be defamed by them. Those reports weren't buried at all. She then goes on to say the Ombudsman was not wrong in the sense that he found that 43 notices that SafeWork issued from 2015 to 2018 to BMCC re-asbestos, that of three, there were very minor ones that did not meet technical requirements. That's not what the Ombudsman found. The Ombudsman found that of all of the notices the Ombudsman examined, all of those the Ombudsman examined, all of them were either unlawful or inappropriately issued. In relation to the other 43 notices, the Ombudsman made no finding because the Ombudsman didn't examine them. But of the notices the Ombudsman did examine, a cross-section, all of them were found to be so defective as to require an unprecedented public apology from the government to this council via SafeWork New South Wales and recompense. So my concern is that these issues, long after the public inquiry is finished, continue to be agitated in the public. Now, when that happens, the staff of the council then have to go and address these issues. And all I'm saying is it's got to stop. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We need to be dealing with that and not being distracted by this, which has been dealt with by a public inquiry and by the New South Wales Ombudsman. During the Black Summer fires, I was conducting the business of the council with that whole public inquiry hanging over our heads, not knowing if we'd still be in office, but yet focusing on the community's needs in the fires. During the first lockdown, we had the same allegations still hanging over our heads, but yet we got on with the business of protecting the community. Enough. It's got to stop because it is distracting and it takes away from what we ought to be doing, and that is supporting 100% our community. There were people who were accused of giving mates jobs who don't even live in the community anymore, let alone hold their roles. During that whole public inquiry process and the allegations that were aired on 2GB, not by Councillor Brown, but by others. But certainly Councillor Brown went on 2GB and she questioned the appointment of the then acting general manager. There's no fault found in that appointment. It was examined by the public inquiry. My issue isn't with the past. I can put all of those things behind me and move forward. But the fact that it's still continuing to this day is what offends me. It needs to stop because we've got bigger things to deal with than these issues. We need to put them in the past and move forward. Councillor Brown's had ample opportunity to move forward as part of the governing body, and yet it continues. Well, my support for this motion tonight is in desperation for it just to stop so we can get on with the business of looking after our constituents, which is what we all want to do. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll retake the chair if I may.
You have the chair, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there anything further? It's not been spoken against. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. Please show your hands. All those in favour. Councillors Greenhill, Vanderclay, McGregor, Fell, Bowling, Hollywood, Fernanda. Against? Councillors Schreiber and Christie, with Councillor Hua out of the room. I declare the not procedural motion, but the urgency motion carried. I'll now take a motion to resume standing orders. That's moved by Councillor Fell, seconded by Councillor Miles, that we resume standing orders. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Standing orders are resumed. Thank you, councillors. I'll go through mayoral matters of urgency very quickly. First mayoral matter of urgency just renews our offer to the New South Wales government to have our buildings used as local walk-in vaccination hubs for our local community. We made that offer at the last council meeting. We make it again because it's serious. So I move that way. It's second to the Deputy Mayor. I don't think anything needs to be said because we've said a lot about it, but all I will say in moving it is that I think it is really important that we enable easy access to vaccinations within our community. And I take it there's no dissent from that resolution. there isn't any. Can I just say, and I'll just start the clock, if I could, in speaking to this. I want to congratulate all of the councillors around this table for the responsible role you've played in promoting vaccination. And I want to actually commend Councillor Christie for an article I saw in the Gazette this week, that at the ripe old age of 30, Councillor Christie went and had a shot of AstraZeneca in order to protect his family and the community. And I thought that was a great example. I mean, I've had 2 shots of AstraZeneca. I know Councillor Hua has others. I know many of you had Pfizer. I know that you are all people that embrace vaccination. But when I see a 30-year-old prepared to take a vaccination that's not, wasn't widely thought to be used by those, or should be used by those under 50, I do want to draw that out and thank him for being a standard bearer for vaccination. I know that in our own ward, we face an opponent who believes that COVID-19 is a meagre threat. Well, you, sir, are a standard bearer against that argument, and I thank you very much for that. I've got nothing further to say. Does anyone else have anything to say? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, you would be aware that there is a general election pending on the 4th of December. I put the following motion before you for the reasons I'm about to outline. It's seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, at this time, the council goes into recess towards the end of December and doesn't come back until the end of January. The poll will be declared sometime around the 23rd of December. If we don't have a council meeting once the poll's declared, we won't have a council or a mayor for a big chunk of the bushfire season. Indeed, for all of December and most of January, nearly 2 months, there'll be no democratically elected governing body of the council if we sit with the current time frame. So this motion says that there will be a council meeting either on the 23rd or within 7 days of the poll being declared, whichever occurs first, so that the councillors, the newly elected councillors, can take the oath of office, and so that a mayor, deputy mayor and alternate deputy mayor can be elected. It is important, particularly during the bushfire season, that our community has a governing body and that we don't go for 2 months of what is a shortened term, just over 2.5 years, without us taking office. It's seconded the Deputy Mayor. I take it there's no opposition to this. If there isn't, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, I declare it carried unanimously. Minute by the Mayor, affordable housing in the Blue Mountains. It's moved by me, seconded Councillor McGregor. Very briefly, there is a need for affordable housing in the Blue Mountains, but the developers and the government will tell you that the way to do that is to let medium density or high density housing rip, and that will give you the opportunity to have affordable housing. Well, it's not true. And if we look around parts of Sydney, we'll see that that approach hasn't worked. What this resolution calls for is a report to come to the newly elected council after the election, setting out ways in which we can properly and fully augment affordable housing options within the paradigm of our current local environment plan. The same local environment plan that's protected this city from overdevelopment since its inception. We don't need to accept the pro-development lobby's argument that, letting development rip is the way to ensure affordable housing. It can be done while also protecting the environment, quality of life, and the amenity of the Blue Mountains. It can be done within the paradigm of our LEP, and I'm confident that our staff can properly brief the newly elected council on the ways in which this can be done without embracing the lowest common denominator. So I put this motion before you. It calls for that report to come to the newly elected council. I think it's something they should consider, and I'm sure there won't be any dissent, but we'll see. Does the seconder, Councillor McGregor, wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just note in commending this motion to councillors that speaking to one of my West Rock colleagues from Liverpool Council, she's been concerned at the building regulations that govern affordable housing in high rises and other forms of medium and high density living are not appropriate for either people in pandemic situations as they are currently, and or to meet some of the challenges, the health challenges that are presented by climate change and heat events in densely populated areas. So yeah, and there was, and I read recently in the Washington Post that some American jurisdictions are looking at developing codes for affordable housing and social housing and all sorts that make them not the minimum sort of health standards, but the maximum for people who are vulnerable and other reasons. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this to council, and I look forward to the briefing, although perhaps I won't be experiencing it. But thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Any other councillors wish to speak? There's no opposition to this. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you. I just also wanted to add how important this is for our community, in the sense that we have seen quite a, I think we need to be able to understand what the housing challenges are in the Blue Mountains, because we've seen a lot of purchase of investment properties as investment properties for Airbnb, which we don't have any jurisdiction over, because housing is a free market, and it's very, we have state and federal laws that don't particularly regulate it. But I do think it's a very complex policy area, but the area that we have control over, and which is really critical as a city in a World Heritage area, is having the right kind of housing for our community. And fundamentally, our local environment plan is one of the most important instruments, statutory pieces of legislation that we have custodianship over as a council and as the governing body. And we need to make sure that we are absolutely protecting our environment and the way that the built environment intersects with the natural environment. And particularly that notion of hard surfaces and making sure that we've got enough permeable surfaces. We've seen with the increased hard surfaces just on the highway at Bullaburra, with a really poorly designed detention basin, basically shred to pieces a hanging swamp. If we get housing in the wrong spots, we can kiss goodbye to our wonderful and ecologically protected communities of our hanging swamps. So we absolutely need to be fully briefed. We can't assume that, as the Mayor says, just a pro-development push of just letting it rip and letting it things sort themselves out, letting the market sort it out. That is absolutely, really considerably dangerous. And I will continue to fight for a better understanding and greater understanding across our community of the value and importance of our local environment plan, of striking that balance between the built environment and our city as a World Heritage area.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hua, you wish to speak?
Very briefly, if I might, Mr. Mayor, I really don't have a great deal to add to the sterling remarks that have just preceded me. I do just wish, though, to place on the public record how close an issue this is to my heart. We really do face an enormous social crisis in housing, affecting people from all walks of life, and but particularly, and very, very well illustrated by last night's 7:30 report, which I commend to you all, looking at the impact, particularly on elderly women who perhaps have been divorced after many years in marriage and walk away with very little superannuation, very few assets, and once they come to the end of their working lives, are in an enormously precarious position. And frankly, for a wealthy nation in the 21st century, it's a very poor reflection on us all. And look, it requires all levels of government to address this crisis, but I do think that we need to be taking the initiative and providing some leadership as we need to on so many other issues affecting our communities. But if I could just, in closing, reinforce the comments made by Councillor Hollywood about the importance of defending our local environment plan and ensuring that development, particularly in the bush-urban interface, is fiercely defended by that plan. It relates to another matter on the agenda tonight, but it intersects very strongly with this issue also, and it has my fulsome support. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Were there any further councillors that wish to speak? If not, there's one matter. Oh, Councillor Fell, yes, the call is yours.
Thank you, and I'll make this very brief. And I'll first of all just endorse all the comments that have been made by those who've spoken before me, and just throw in a call out, I guess, for highlighting the importance of this issue to people in our communities who suffer from a range of disabilities, and amongst the disabilities that, or amongst the barriers that affect them the most, the affordability of housing is obviously one of them. And I really look forward to us being able to engineer and design an approach, a really good approach to the provision of housing for those people, a local approach, one that suits us, not one forced on us by the powers that be in Macquarie Street. Thanks.
Okay, any further? There being none, or no one further. I don't think there's anyone further, is there? No, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. All right, thank you, councillors. Mayoral Minute number 2 in my name. It's seconded by Councillor Vanderklay. Look, some local faith groups came and met with me, and they seek to play a role in our community, supporting those in tough times. The basis of that support would not be any sort of form of religious conversion, but just to use their resources to assist the community at a time of hardship. So that approach was made by members of these groups. They offered to provide practical support to the community as it recovers from the multiple disasters that have fallen upon us. So what this seeks to do is to call for your support for me to convene a meeting with these groups, attended by the CEO or her representative, in order for us to discuss how that support might be given effect to in an appropriate way. I don't think there's much more that needs to be said about that. It's been seconded. Is there any opposition? No, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Sorry, Councillor Vanderklay, did you wish to speak?
Oh, it doesn't matter, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that with the Rural Fire Service, I do know that there are several community groups in the religious groups like the Brethren who serve the community very well, and I totally support this. Thank you.
Thank you. That's noted and the motion's been carried. The next motion is an initiative of mine that I brought before you. It's moved me, it's seconded the Deputy Mayor, and it is that we move to have a fully electric fleet or 50% of our fleet electric by 2025 as part of our 2025 zero emissions plan. So the resolution is that we receive a report into the efficacy of making 50% of our fleet electric by 2025 as part of our zero emissions by 2025 plan, and that we write to the federal government, Susan Ley, the Minister of the Environment, Michael McCormack, the Minister for various departments, and of course, if I could ask us to add for the minutes, Susan Templeman MP, seeking incentives for electric cars in line with the European Union's Fit for 55 strategy. Councillors, this is something I bring before you because it is something that's important to me, and I know that it's important for you. You know, in the staff report, staff will interact with other local governments around Australia in the report that comes before us. They'll investigate options to increase electrical vehicle levels in our fleet by 2025, including an option for 50% by that date. They will, in the report, explore alternative models such as lower targets, plug-in hybrid targets, alternative ownership models, and they'll evaluate the whole of life costs of zero emission vehicles along with ICE vehicles and outline likely carbon savings. I've asked the staff to also consider whether or not the charging of those vehicles can be done in a way that is also based on renewable energy. The electrical vehicle industry and technology, as we all know, is advancing very quickly, with a number of electrical vehicles available now globally, rapidly increasing. And although not all local government vehicles can be replaced by electrical vehicles, it seems at this time, with some fit for purpose requirements necessitating the use of combustion engines, we can do much better. And we can, I think, strive to have half our fleet electric by 2025. The price of electrical vehicles is reducing incredibly quickly, and future price estimates vary wildly. Some projections estimate that price parity may occur as early as 2023, with others estimating 2025. There are absolutely no financial implications from us getting a report on this. It is aligned with the recommendations of the objectives that we've passed before around zero emissions. But I think we should be ambitious. I think this is something we should look at. I bring this before you as a personal initiative of mine because I know that it is right in the sweet spot of this council's drive to reduce emissions and to investigate all possible avenues for doing that. Thank you, councillors. Does the seconder wish to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor, but I do have a question and to you.
Yes.
I have been hearing that the state government is trying to get their buses, they're buying a lot of electric buses. Maybe that we should also write to the state member for the Blue Mountains, Trish Doyle, and the minister relating to this and to see where they're going with theirs, and we might get some more information about it.
Yes, thank you. We'll take that on board. Thank you, Councillor van der Klee. Councillor Fell to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I'll keep this very brief. The first thing that I'd like to do is just congratulate you on bringing this matter to council. It's another example of very much the direction that this council's going in. One which I must admit I hadn't thought of in this sort of time frame myself, but having now called the first meeting of the Planetary Health Committee and spoken to those people on a range of things, I'd have to say and pass on to you and to the staff that those 12 people who've been appointed to the Planetary Health Committee are enthusiastic in their appreciation of so much that council's doing. And this will be yet another example of an initiative which I'm sure they'll be absolutely thrilled with. And your point about the reducing costs of of electric vehicles is particularly apposite to me at the moment. I was just informed by a friend of mine who recently bought a Tesla at quite an enormous price. It was about, I think from memory, close to $70,000. He informed me that the new model coming out at the end of the year, although a smaller vehicle, is pitched at around $40,000, and that's the order of lowering of costs that's going to make a lot of this possible. And of course, that brings us to the point that we have to be well informed to make the most that we can of that. And it'll be interesting to see council get to 50%. I think my street might get there before 2025 at the rate that they're going. There are now 3 Teslas and 1 other electric car. So that's 4 solely electric cars and 3 hybrids at least in a street of only just over 100 houses. So I'll pass that on as a comment. But again, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Fell. Thank you also for your kind comments. I'll go to Councillor Bowling and then Councillor Hoare. I noticed the clock wasn't ticking before, but I'm sure it will start to tick now. Councillor Bowling has the call.
Yes, just like to congratulate you, Mr. Mayor, on that. It's a good move. I do flag with you the interest that's gathering about hydrogen-powered vehicles too. So maybe that ought to be looked at as well at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bowling, I agree entirely, and I'm sure we can take that on board. There are some excellent hybrid vehicles out there, and that technology is improving all the time. Thank you.
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen, sorry. Oh, hydrogen, I beg your pardon. All right. Well, we might take that on board in the analysis as well. But thank you for that contribution. Thank you. And sorry, I misheard you. But I would note that there are some excellent hybrid vehicles also, hydrogen and hybrid vehicles, and the technology there is advancing all the time. So I'm sure the report will canvass that. Councillor Hoare has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I wish to rise to congratulate you on bringing this motion forward. It's absolutely something that we need to be doing as a responsible council, and as a council, well, it was the second equal council in New South Wales to declare a climate emergency. This is absolutely in line with that aim, and something that we need to be doing with a great deal of gusto and raised ambition. I might note that I welcome the contribution of Councillor Bowling's raising of the issue of hydrogen vehicles, as that may well even, I'm not sure if they're there yet at the right price points, but in time that may even replace some of the internal combustion engine requirements that we see at the moment. This is certainly a very rapidly changing space, and I think it's very important that council is seen to be, and is actually taking a lead in the adoption of electric vehicles. I myself am a little bit disappointed that I'm not able to follow in the footsteps of my my brother-in-law in Christchurch, who because of different tariff regimes and the lack of the Kiwis' desire to protect the car industry, is able to import second-hand Nissan Leafs for a quarter of the price, under a quarter of the price that Councillor Fell has just mentioned for cheaper Teslas. And I'd be very, very happy running down the hill in a second-hand Nissan Leaf, but they're just not to be had for love or money because of our federal tariff protection laws. And maybe that's an issue that we could also add to our advocacy efforts. But look, I won't prattle on any further. I think this is a really great initiative, something we need to be doing, to be welcoming. And I'm sure it will be well regarded by the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare, and thank you for your support. Is there anything further? If not, I'll put the matter. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Mayoral Minute number 4, standing in my name, relates to, it's seconded by the Deputy Mayor, relates to the state of affairs that we find existing at the moment. We are informed at Katoomba Hospital, and of course, if this is incorrect, the record can be corrected, although I'm advised by staff that this is in fact the situation. So it's moved by me, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that the Council notes the COVID-19 transmission outbreak in the Mental Health Centre of Nepean Hospital resulted in impacts on staffing and risks to staff in Katoomba Hospital. The Council notes that Katoomba Hospital itself has only one ventilator, and the Council writes to the Premier, the New South Wales Health Minister, with copies to Trish Doyle MP, requesting assurances that regional and rural communities, non-metropolitan Sydney, are not being placed at risk during this current critical time due to resourcing issues around staff and equipment. Councillors, if we have a situation where staff from Katoomba Hospital are being sent elsewhere because of an uncontrolled outbreak, e.g. Penrith and Nepean Hospital, and if we have a situation where in the Blue Mountains we have one ventilator, the problem is obvious. Right now, we have over 30 COVID-19 cases in the Blue Mountains, and that has increased over the last week, although we've had a couple of days of stability and zero growth. But we have active cases in the Blue Mountains. It troubles me that resources are being drawn out of our hospitals and that we have reportedly, and I stand to be corrected, but only one ventilator here in the Blue Mountains. Now, if those numbers grow rapidly, I think we're entitled to be assured that appropriate measures are in place to protect our community. I would hate to find that we had half a dozen people requiring ventilation here in the Blue Mountains and that there weren't half a dozen ventilators. I would hate to think that nursing was required or medical staff were required here in the Blue Mountains when they're not available because they're elsewhere due to the outbreak. It's important that we receive these assurances and understand what the planning is around resourcing issues so that we can properly represent the interests of our community. So I commend this resolution to you and would seek your support. Does the seconder wish to speak? No. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to bundle, I was going to say something about the previous motion around COVID as well. So I'll bundle it all into one. The first thing I wanted to say is I think it's really important that we take up the role, as we have been, for advocating for our community around effective information, effective resourcing, and effective access to vaccination and to healthcare. I want to pay tribute to all the healthcare workers who are doing an amazing job, and I think under increasingly tough conditions. What worries me is a couple of weeks ago, we had very few cases. And in fact, when this Mayoral Minute, I think probably was drafted, we had very few cases. We actually have tonight, Mr. Mayor, the figures have been updated. We actually have 42 cases, according to the New South Wales Health website. It's been increasing over the last 10 days. Now, 42 cases, I don't know what the percentage is, the likelihood, what the risk is of people needing to go to hospital. That is not my role. But what I will say is I've heard the message very clearly, as have others in the community, that you can deteriorate quite rapidly. We already know that our hospital system, sadly, is under significant stress down in Western Sydney. So our community may well be very much relying on our hospital at Katoomba. And so I think this Mayoral Minute is really important to try to provide some certainty to our community that we are advocating for our community and that we want to make sure that the Blue Mountains is not forgotten. Because one of the things I think that I'm hearing from people is that people feel forgotten, that our calls, say, for a vaccination hub, my understanding is we haven't even had a response, let alone a yes or a no, or we're considering it. And we know for people who are waiting for Pfizer are on waiting lists to December. And it's really hard. You're hearing we go ahead and get vaccinated, but if you need Pfizer or you've got children or young people, it's very, very difficult to get an appointment. So we need to keep the pressure on, both in terms of the access to vaccinations, but also ensuring that we've got proper access to healthcare because the cases are growing. And if there's anything that we can do to get the message out to the community that we are no longer a community with a few cases, that the cases are growing and that everybody needs to be vigilant. If there's anything that we can do, I'm trying social media, but I think it's really, really important because a lot of people are saying over the last few days to me that they're unaware that there are growing case numbers in the Blue Mountains. So thanks, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this and the previous motion forward. Mayor,
I've taken to including the Blue Mountains case numbers in my daily reports just so that people do know COVID is in our community. It is growing. And when people call for us to be separated from the rest of Sydney, they need to know that they do so with a growing case number here in the Blue Mountains. Councillor Fernanda has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be brief, and I don't know if this is going to be out of order or not because I'm sort of bringing two hats into one now. As you're aware and staff are aware, and maybe the public's not aware, that I'm actually one of those frontliners who are working in COVID clinics. And I do see firsthand how so under-resourced the staff are. And whilst I'm working down in the mountains, I'm very much aware of the pressure that's put upon the hospitals, Katoomba Hospital as well. One nurse is responsible for maybe 1 or 2 COVID patients. So you take one nurse from looking after a ward, because once you're with a COVID patient, you're not allowed to go and mix with other patients and deal with other patients. So if we can imagine that, if there are cases that will increase in the mountains that require hospitalisation and it's urgent, and the system's already fall down and they go to Katoomba Hospital, there are not the staff there to be able to cope with dealing with the amount of time and the resources and the attention that's needed to look after one patient. I'm so fully supportive of this, and I'm a huge advocate that we need to do more in the Blue Mountains. While people might think, oh, 30 is not a big enough number up here, you know, we've got other hospitals, bigger hospitals to transfer to. I'm telling you, we don't. If numbers increase in the mountains and the pressure on Katoomba Hospital is going to be so surmountable that you're taking people out of there already. We need to do more. The minister needs to do more. They need to support the Blue Mountains. They need to support, as you said, regional hospitals, because we are all exhausted. You know, if there's, I have emails, countless emails begging me to come in for all types of shifts everywhere because there are not enough nursing staff to look after COVID patients. Every day I'm called in. So what I'm saying is that if Katoomba Hospital, if we're needing for emergency situation to bring somebody who's gone into respiratory distress over having COVID, they will not cope. And it's unfair that we don't have the resources up in that hospital. So whilst I don't work for Katoomba Hospital and it's not a conflict of interest, I am very much aware of the strain that's being put upon the staff. So I'm fully endorsing your motion, and I hope that the ministers listen, and I hope that there's action taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. It hasn't been spoken against. I think I might be at liberty to put it. Is that right, councillors? I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, I'll now go through and pull out any items that you wish to withdraw, although I rather suspect there may not be many. But I'll see if I'm right. Councillor Fell, do you wish to withdraw any items?
For I think the first time, Mr. Mayor, no.
Indeed. Councillor Bowling? Councillor McGregor?
No.
Councillor Van der Clay? You're on mute.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, item 14 for me.
Okay, item 14. Thank you. Councillor Christie?
I'm content.
You are content. Councillor Fernando?
Content.
Content. Councillor Hua.
Item 16, if I might, Mr. Mayor. Just brief noting. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hua. Councillor Miles. Content. Have I missed anyone?
It might be a matter of urgency as well.
Yeah, that's different, Councillor Miles. That's different. Councillor Hollywood.
You missed me, but I'm not pulling, I don't need to pull anything out.
Content. All right, councillors, then the following items, item 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 and 17 are all moved in globo by the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Chris van der Kleen, seconded by the Robin to his Batman, Councillor Fell. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously, which brings us to item number 14. And I think Councillor van der Kleen wish to move something.
Yes, I like to move that one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor van der Kleen, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor van der Kleen has the call.
I'm going to be very brief on this, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the council staff and the team who have been helping in the with the Heritage Committee and being able to get this back again. The Heritage Assistance Fund, we did about 4 or 5 projects this year to help people with heritage properties to improve them, and we're going to do it again next year. So I'm just asking the community to keep an eye out for these grants where people could get small grants to help them fix up their heritage properties. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor van der Kleen. Does anyone else wish to speak? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I've just had a note from the Executive Officer. I just seek some clarity from her. Did you say Councillor Schreiber's out of the meeting for this item? Just for the minutes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Schreiber did leave the meeting, so I have him as out of the meeting for the last item.
Yes. Has he returned to the meeting?
No, he hasn't.
All right. We'll record Councillor Schreiber is out of the meeting until he returns. Councillor Christie, you have some explanation?
Yes, if I can just add, he has a medical issue and has messaged me to say that he'll be leaving after the final mayoral minute of urgency.
Okay. Let's wish Councillor Schreiber all the best and note that he's out of the meeting for the following items. Thank you, Councillor Christie. We wish him all the best. Item number 16 was pulled out by Councillor Hua. It's moved Councillor Hua, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hua, you wish to move the recommendation, I take it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, and that's seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hua has the call.
Thank you, everybody. Look, given the lateness of the hour, I don't wish to extend the meeting unnecessarily, but look, even I am surprised at just how relevant this motion has suddenly become since I put it into the business paper process. We really are living in an extraordinary time, and the situation, obviously, in Afghanistan has really shone a light on the world's refugee crisis. Many others around the world, but this has brought it into particular focus. We live in a world where people have no option but to flee their homes and their countries. That globally, resettlement places for these people are rare and vastly oversubscribed. In order to live in a civilised world, we really need to create more opportunities for safe and legal entry into Australia. And one of these is, one of the best ways to do this, is through community-led sponsorship. The government's community sponsorship program needs to be fairer and more just. Communities want to sponsor refugees to come to Australia, but the current program is very expensive and takes places away from the broader humanitarian intake. So I thank you very much for your support to call for a community sponsorship program that does not take places away from others in need, that provides adequate support and services, that limits the costs on sponsors, which has been very successfully done in Canada, I believe, allows community, family and businesses to act as sponsors and creates more places for people in need of protection to settle in Australia. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hua. Anyone else wish to speak? There's no one else. There's one matter before us. The seconder wish to speak? No?
No, I appreciate the motion being brought forward, and particularly in these times, but I don't need to speak.
Thanks, Councillor Hollywood. Thank you, Councillor Hoare. I'll put the matter. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously with Councillor Schreiber out of the room. All right, we have one matter of urgency by Councillor Hoare. I declare that the matter is urgent. It's moved by Councillor Hoare. Is it seconded? Seconded, Councillor Van der Clay. Councillor Hoare, did you wish to say anything?
Look, just very briefly, as Councillor Hollywood has alluded to earlier, it's very important that we defend our LEP. I'm really astonished to see that the clearing of vegetation that has been brought to my attention could possibly have occurred so swiftly after a property transaction. Look, it's a terrible sight to lay eyes on, and is I'm just at a loss to understand how in 2021, in an environmentally sensitive city of the Blue Mountains in the middle of the World Heritage Area, this kind of thing could go on. I do wish to thank the efforts of staff to very swiftly investigate this, but I would very much appreciate the matter being, well, the options, the regulatory options that may be available are brought to the attention of the governing body. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Executive Officer, have we exhausted the business of the council? The Executive
Yes,
Officer,
Mr.
have we exhausted the
Mr.
business
Mayor.
of the council? We have. We
Yes,
have.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other matters of urgency.
Thanks, Executive Officer. I move to close the meeting. It's moved Councillor Van der Clay, seconded Councillor Fell. I take it there's no debate on adjournment. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. I bid you all a fond good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe. Bye.
Thanks,
good night all.
Toby.
Stay safe.
Shut the
Stay
meeting.
safe, yes.
Bye now.
Good night.
Extraordinary
Night.
times.